Welcome to a deep dive into one of the most chilling and mysterious cases of our time, the tragic murder of Katarzyna Zowada. For nearly 2 decades, her death remained one of Poland's most infamous unsolved mysteries, filled with horrific details and terrifying twists. What really happened to Katarzyna? Who was behind this gruesome crime? And how did it take nearly 20 years to uncover the truth? Today, we're taking you through the entire case, from the initial investigation to the shocking revelation of the true killer. Katarzyna Zowada was just 23 years old when she vanished without a trace on November 12, 1998. A student at Jagiellonian University in Krakow, Katarzyna was studying religion, but she struggled with depression following the death of her father in 1996. That November day, she missed a scheduled therapy session, and from that moment on, no one saw her again. Her mother, Jolanta Zowada, was initially hopeful that Katarzyna had simply lost track of time, but as days turned into weeks, that hope turned to dread. Jolanta reported her daughter missing, but with no immediate signs of foul play, the police did not prioritize the case. It would be another 2 months before the world would learn of the horrific fate that had befallen Katarzyna. January 6, 1999, was a day that the crew of a tugboat under the Sula River would never forget. As they went about their routine work, the boat's propeller suddenly stopped. Assuming it was caught in debris, the crew went to investigate, but what they found was far more horrifying. Wrapped around the propeller was human skin, pale, rubbery, and disturbingly intact, with a human ear still attached. Forensic experts quickly determined that the skin belonged to Katarzyna Zowada, who had been missing for 2 months by that point. The skin had been removed with surgical precision, starting from her thighs and stopping just above her neck. It was clear that whoever was responsible for this had a deep understanding of anatomy. The discovery of Katarzyna's remains sent shockwaves through Poland, and the police launched one of the most extensive investigations in their history. They consulted experts from around the world, including a representative from the FBI based in Europe. The psychological profile created by these experts described a sadistic individual, likely with a background in medical training or martial arts, who derived pleasure from inflicting pain. One of the most significant early suspects was Vladimir, a man with a dark history of violence. Vladimir had been arrested for the brutal murder of his own father, who he had decapitated and skinned, wearing the skin as a mask. The similarities between this crime and what had been done to Katarzyna were chilling. For a time, it seemed like the police might have found their man. Vladimir's past was as dark as it gets. He had a history of violence, and his method of murdering his father was shockingly similar to the fate that had befallen Katarzyna. Both crimes involved extreme violence and a grotesque fascination with skinning. The connection seemed almost too perfect, and for a while, Vladimir was a prime suspect in Katarzyna's murder. However, as the investigation into Vladimir continued, problems began to emerge. Despite the brutality of the crime he committed against his father, there was no concrete evidence linking him to Katarzyna's murder. His DNA did not match any samples found on her remains, and there was no proof that he had even known her. The case against Vladimir began to fall apart, leaving the police once again without a suspect. With the case against Vladimir collapsing, the investigation into Katarzyna Zowada's murder began to grow cold. For years, there were no new leads, no new evidence. The psychological profile suggested that the killer was a meticulous planner, someone who might never strike again or who was hiding in plain sight. As time passed, the case was pushed further into the background, with many fearing that Katarzyna's killer would never be found. Despite this, Katarzyna's mother, Jolanta, never gave up. She continued to push for answers, keeping her daughter's memory alive. But with each passing year, it seemed less likely that the truth would ever come to light. The case was, for all intents and purposes, forgotten by all those who loved Katarzyna. In 2017, nearly 2 decades after Katarzyna's murder, the case was reopened thanks to a significant breakthrough. The police received an anonymous tip that pointed to a man named Robert Jankowski, a 52-year-old with a disturbing past. Jankowski has been a person of interest back in 1999, but had never been thoroughly investigated. Jancwecki had worked at Krakow Institute of Zoology, where he had access to tools and knowledge that would allow him to commit the kind of crime that had been inflicted on Katarzyna. He was also known for his erratic behavior, including spying on neighbors and visiting Katarzyna's grave regularly. But it wasn't until forensic experts found bloodstains matching Katarzyna's DNA in Jancwecki's bathroom that police were able to make an arrest. The full extent of Robert Jancwecki's crime was revealed through his own meticulous records. In a journal found in his apartment, Jancwecki detailed the horrific acts he committed against Katarzyna. He wrote about how he first encountered her as she was walking to a therapy session. Jancwecki, who had been stalking her for weeks, seized the opportunity to offer her a ride, which she accepted, not knowing the horror that awaited her. Once he had lured her into his car, Jancwecki took Katarzyna back to his apartment, where the true nightmare began. He described in chilling detail how he had beaten her with a barbell, shattering her femur and pelvis, leaving her unable to move. But the beating was just the beginning. Jancwecki made precise incisions on her neck, armpits, and groin, areas that would have caused the most pain while keeping her alive for as long as possible. He wanted her to suffer to be fully aware of what was happening. The journal entries revealed that Jancwecki kept Katarzyna alive for hours, possibly even days, torturing her relentlessly. He detailed how he removed her organs while she was still conscious, describing the pleasure he felt as he watched her slowly die. The final act of his horror was the skinning. Jancwecki, having learned how to skin animals during his time at the Institute of Zoology, applied these skills to Katarzyna, meticulously removing her skin to create a suit, a grotesque trophy that he intended to keep as a reminder of his twisted conquest. Jancwecki didn't stop at just creating the skin suit. He described how he would wear it, draping it over his body as if it were a garment. The idea of wearing another person's skin is something straight out of a horror film. But for Jancwecki, it was the ultimate expression of his power over Katarzyna. He had reduced her from a living, breathing person to nothing more than an object, something he could possess and control. The journal entries were filled with a chilling sense of pride. Jancwecki loved the control he had over Katarzyna, the suffering he inflicted on her, and the ultimate act of transforming her into his macabre creation. It was this journal, more than any other piece of evidence, that sealed his fate. The police now had the detailed confession of a man who had taken sadistic pleasure in the prolonged torture and eventual murder of Katarzyna Zowada. Jancwecki's writing also revealed how he had meticulously planned the crime. He had been stalking Katarzyna for weeks, learning her routine and waiting for the right moment to strike. He had even practiced his skinning techniques on animals at the Krakow Institute of Zoology, perfecting the skill he would later use on Katarzyna. This premeditation made it clear that Jancwecki's actions were not the result of a sudden impulse, but rather the execution of a carefully crafted plan. Once the journal was discovered, the police had enough evidence to arrest Jancwecki. They also uncovered additional damning evidence in his apartment, including the bloodstains matching Katarzyna's DNA and hair samples that further linked him to the crime. The case against Jancwecki was iron tight, and the police wasted no time in taking him into custody. Robert Jancwecki was arrested in October 2017, and the details of his arrest sent shockwaves through Poland. The news that Katarzyna's killer had finally been caught brought a mix of relief and horror to the public. For Katarzyna's mother, Jolanta, the news was both a blessing and a curse. She was relieved that the man responsible for her daughter's death would face justice, but the details of what Katarzyna had endured were almost too much to bear. During the trial, which was highly publicized, the contents of Jancwecki's journal were presented as evidence. The public was horrified by the extent of his sadism, and there was little doubt in anyone's mind that he would be convicted. In 2022, Jancwecki was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge described his actions as inhumane and beyond comprehension. Katarzyna's family, while finding some closure in the sentencing, will forever carry the scars of this tragedy. The case of Katarzyna Zowada is a grim reminder of the darkness that can exist within the human soul. It is a story of unspeakable horror, but also of the relentless pursuit of justice, no matter how long it takes. Katarzyna's memory lives on, a testament to the importance of never giving up in the face of evil. So what do you guys think? Was justice actually served? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this story as chilling as I did, be sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more true crime stories that will keep you up at night.